So get this, podcast listeners. We have a go woke or go broke segment in this podcast. You're going to love this. So get this. We're going to call it the woke cemetery. You know, the place where you get buried. It's the woke cemetery. Solar farms in graveyards. Yes. So WBUR, which is Boston's NPR news station. You know, it's one of those publicly funded news stations. They have an article and it says there's a rise in cremations, and that rise in cremations in the US opens unused cemetery space to new solar projects. Fewer families are choosing burials for deceased loved ones and opting instead for cremation. It's a funerary trend that is helping to forge a link between the Catholic Church and the solar industry. If you picture a solar field, what do you see? Probably a large open space, flat and dry without too many trees and with lots of sunlight. Now think about a cemetery. Swap out those solar panels for gravestones, and the locations suddenly have a lot in common. So why not combine the two? Well, apparently that's a trend in Boston. The only thing is that this writer got wrong is that if you see a field that's an open space and it's like a beautiful meadow, and you cover it up in solar panels, it's not a beautiful space anymore, and it's not a meadow. You just ruined the environment. But in a cemetery,
but you don't care because you're dead.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what I was thinking. They do have a lot in common.
Just like peanut butter and jelly.
Two things that aren't really producing anything: either a dead body or a solar panel.
But what makes us woke is that, you know, you're going to have instead of a headstone, I guess you're going to have a solar panel there, and you know, it's going to be wired. I mean, where are they going to put the wires?
I can't wait to hear the tax credit for this.
Yeah. Well, the liberals, you know, the liberals actually created this problem because Matt and I are both on Health and Government Operations, and I had a long talk with the mortuary director. He said, you know, because of COVID, we're still charging $10,000 or $15,000, but you couldn't have more than 3 or 4 people. So everybody's suddenly decided, well, you know what? I'm not paying $15,000 for me and one other person to see Grandma Annie be buried. Let's just send her to cremation. So I don't know if that trend will change.
It's always odd when we hear those hearings like that because we turn the air condition down in the committee room, really cold.
Well, I think also, and this is Massachusetts, but I'm pretty sure in New York they probably have a lot of unused space as well because, you know, Cuomo killed so many elderly people with COVID that they probably were cremated because I guess my understanding is once you pass with COVID, there's still a short period of time you can catch it or something like that. Is that true? I don't know.
I would think so.
I don't know. I don't have.
It sounds reasonable.
I don't know for sure, but I think what they did was they wanted to dispose of the bodies pretty quickly, and they did so by cremation, which now you have all these spaces. But look, what I'm saying here is this is definitely go woke or go broke because the solar companies are going, hey, you know, we want subsidies to be able to put these things in graveyards too, because, you know, that's much more environmentally sound than putting it on top of a roof somewhere. And it's also just cool. I mean, it shows you, in my opinion, I think they're sick because I don't think solar panels belong in graveyards, right? It's a graveyard, right? You're supposed to, it's a place where you go to honor the dead. And then suddenly you have this empty space on one part of the graveyard.
Their new religion's climate change.
That's good.
I mean,
that's good.
You know, they don't really care about the respect.
So they can go to the graveyard and basically honor climate change, and you know that's their religion. Yeah. And right, say, oh my God, you know, climate change. We've got solar panels in the graveyard.
We like to put the cross up, and they want to put solar panels up. It's not the same.
So another thing, part of this go woke or go broke is an article in Morning Star. Can solar installations help foster biodiversity? And it says reports on how a new solar park in Sacramento County, California, not only produces clean energy, but also creates habitats for pollinator species. At the end of the last year, workers in Sacramento County, California, completed construction of a 16.5 megawatt solar park on what was once open ranch land. In December, the Rio Linda Solar Farm began producing enough energy to power 2,600 homes annually. Of course, unless it was raining or cloudy. Usually, the ground underneath big solar installations is scraped and covered with gravel or low grass. But if you drive by this solar farm, you'll be treated to a more different view, an array of pollinator-friendly native plants and wildflowers like purple needlegrass and California poppy. Now, once again, podcast listeners, and Brian and Matt, this was a place where you had hundreds of acres of ranch land, and they've covered them up with solar panels, and they're going, but we've created a pollinator area. Well, how? You've covered it up with solar panels.
It just sounds like it's growing up with weeds.
Yeah.
And
It's solar panel with weeds.
but this is, to me, it's like very apropos to this podcast too about meritocracy. Is like they're not the party of science, and the Democrats, and they also don't believe in meritocracy, because why in the heck would you believe in solar panels covering up ranch land?
Well, this is a public podcast, so I want this trademark before I say it. We're going to start to have solar artist, and this is solar art. So you might be able to get a degree in solar art here pretty soon. I can see it coming. Solar art with well, would it be solar landscaping or solar art sounds better? I'm a
But
solar
you can only
artist.
get that if you're tall. You know, that's part of the requirement. You're closer to the sun.
And,
So
and you
we
could
only
also
have
be
those-
you could be a grave digger, a solar artist, and a teacher.
Yeah, so the open field had lavender, and then they covered it up with solar panels. But because they left some of the lavender, between the rows of solar panels, but the other lavender is all dead because it's being covered and burned up by the solar panels. Because they did that, it's pollinator friendly. It's much better than what used to be there because it has solar panels on it. I mean, this is just ridiculous stuff. Between that and the woke cemetery, putting solar farms in cemeteries. I mean, but I do like what Matt said. I think that I might
It's
steal
a
that.
religion.
It's a new religion, so let's put them in cemeteries.
Can they pollinate in a cemetery?
Well, only if the solar panels are there.
They can pollinate, they can propagate, they can do all kinds of things in there. So